ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ Gurmukh Pyareo, thank you so much for coming back into the Sadh Sangat. Maharaji tells us again and again what our true purpose is. Mil Sadh Sangat Bhaj Keval Naam. Keval Naam, only Naam. So we're very blessed that Maharaji has brought us here once again to go deeper into this understanding, this Gurmat Gyan, on how do we walk this path of this path of love towards Paramatma, towards our true source, our true mother, our true father. Tum mat pita hum barak tere, tumari kirpa main sukh ganere. And Maharaj di kirpa naal, if you've been attending every week or most weeks, and if you've been doing the practice with that immense grace of Satguru, you will have started to notice some differences within yourself, within your mind. Maybe even that has been rippling out to your family, to your work environment. And Gurmukh Pyareo, sometimes that change can be difficult as well. There can be discomfort as we start to realize the content of our mind, who we've been so far. That can feel uncomfortable. But it can also feel empowering to know, as Darshan Benji was telling us last week, that there is this kale within our mind and we can get consumed within certain types of thoughts within our mind, Rajagun, Tamagun, Satagun. And once we start to know this game of life, this game of our mind, how our thoughts have controlled us, how Maya, Gal, the Panchjot have controlled our mind, then that's also empowering. Maharaji has given us Gurbani Guru. They've given us this path of Simran, of Sikhi, of all of the elements. There is a perfect system, including Ardas, Kirtan, Gurbani, Sangat. Maharaji's given us that perfect system. So just like Sajjan Tag, just like Ganika, just like Ajamal, we can know that that transformation is possible, that it does not matter who you have been in this life, what you have done, whatever we consider to be barbed, we considered we've been a bad person, whatever we've considered to be traumas and experiences that we've had that we think are holding us back in life. It does not matter who you've been, what's happened to you, what you've done, what others have done to you. It is still possible to walk this path of love, to experience Vaheguru within your own mind, within your own life, to experience that peace, that bliss, and that unconditional love. So as Benji and I and other Sangat, with Maharaji's grace, began to understand this deeper instruction, this deeper hukam within Gurbani, it took many, many times, much repetition till this day, Sangatji. You know, we still sometimes need reminders. We still sometimes have questions. And so because of that, we do our Nityanem every day. We go to the Gurdwara all the time. You know, we're constantly walking on that path. We'll fall down, we'll get back up, we'll have a question, we'll get confused or have a doubt. So it's very important that we do revisit Gurbani Guru, what Maharaji is telling us, that Gyan, we revisit it again and again. And it's also important that alongside, as we've said every week, that we're also then doing that practice, that Dhyan as well. So Maharaj can this Sahasyanapa lakho hai, that you can have as many intellectual ideas as you like. You know, you can know whatever has been said here or whatever Gurbani, the concepts they're talking about, you can know them in your mind. And you can go around preaching to your friends and family, oh, that's your Panchjot, or you're in Tamagun right now. But unless we're actually doing the practice alongside it, we're doing that Simran Abhyas alongside it, we're not going to be experiencing what Maharaji has intended for us to experience. that true bliss, that true peace. To have this life, sometimes when we walk upon this path, we think, oh, well, I have to give up so much, or you become somebody who's boring, or you become like a robot with no emotions. And Sangatji, our experience has been, it's the complete opposite of that. As we put down our limitations, our belief systems, our traumas, what starts to happen is you enjoy life even more. You're so much more present. You ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਹਿਸੂਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, you feel, you experience that love within your family. You experience that joy from just, even if it's just having a cup of tea, even if it's, having your langar, whatever it is, you will be so much more in that state of presence, of naam, of connection, of love, of peace, that these little things to the biggest things will become so much more enjoyable. So it's not about being an emotionless robot. It's not about just giving up things that you enjoy. It's about going into that state where you can truly appreciate and enjoy this life. So we're going to have a little bit of it's a little bit of a summary, but we're also going to go deeper in terms of that Dragun Maya, because there may be lots of questions that come up in our mind, not just about understanding it, but how do we actually practically apply that knowledge within our life, within our day-to-day. But just before we begin, again, asking the Sangat to interact. So, again, having been on this path for years, there's people on this call who have been doing Simran longer than myself as well. There's times when we feel really connected, where we're really into the Simran. And of course, there's times where we struggle, where we're not doing enough Simran, or we're trying to do the Simran, we're just having too many thoughts, or, we give up altogether sometimes even, or whatever it is. So what advice would you give based on what your experience has been so far to other Sangat who may be struggling on the path or need some inspiration? What is your advice to someone who is walking on this path about how to stay connected with that Simran? Is there a tip that you can use during the Simran to help you keep your mind ekagra, to keep focused? What advice would you give, if you don't mind putting that in the chat? Darshan Benji, are you here?
Waheguru, Hanji. I was actually just writing in the chat to answer the question.
Hanji, carry on.
Hanji. So Sangata saying, keep trying, don't judge yourself too harshly on technique. Just going with the flow, not forcing it. Don't fight the thoughts, keep practicing to get better. And Jesus, of a similar theme here around this point we all get to within the practice, where we feel like we're fighting a losing battle kind of thing. You'd like, the thoughts are coming and we're feeling so overwhelmed by the thoughts and we're trying to push them away. Sometimes that can start to happen within the Simran. And it can be really difficult then to actually connect with that sehaj, that state that we're trying to experience. And what you Sangat members are sharing is that rather than trying to force it or kind of fight, instead focusing on the practice, focusing on the technique around connecting to the sound and just bringing ourselves back to that can then kind of pull us out of that fight in a way. This is other Sangha members saying, keep trying, don't stop trying. Singing and Shabbats helps my mind settle and prepare for Simran. That's beautiful. So having the Gyan, as we spoke about last time, utilizing both those things, the Gyan, the wisdom from the Gurbani, from the Gatha that we listen to, from the inspirational YouTube videos that we can connect with, to again remind the mind, to awaken the mind to its true purpose, to its true maqsad, because obviously the mind under the grips of the bunch is continually forgetting that. So making yourself do it again and again, even if you don't think you need to that day, Absolutely. So Amdeep Benji's famous phrase of it's too late to learn how to swim when you're drowning. Sometimes we're like, okay, I'm going to do Simran when I'm feeling really angry or struggling. But by that time, we haven't got the practice in, so we don't know how to connect. The mind doesn't know how to connect to the Simran, and instead it keeps going back into vichar, into thoughts. But whereas if we've done the practice, if we've got that practice under our belt, if we're doing that practice day in, day out, breath by breath, then when the storm comes, when those waves come, then we have that asra of the Shabad. We immediately know how to connect back. Um, Mandeep Kaur is suggesting pausing the breath during Simran, so that's a technique we can explore. Very briefly, as we explained in session 1, you've got the pavan and you've got the naam, you've got those two streams kind of emanating from Paramatma's mukh. And the pavan, with that breath comes the thoughts, comes the vichar, comes the connection to Maya. And so when we pause that breath temporarily during the Simran, if we're having lots of thoughts, or if we're sitting in dhyan, which is the next stage of sitting in concentration without the mantra, listening to the Shabad, we can pause the breath to stop, disconnect from that flow of pavan, that flow of breath. And what we find there is that the thoughts decrease. So Sangat continuing to say, keep showing up, focusing on the breath, self-compassion, patience, absolutely. Sometimes we forget that being harsh on ourselves is also, Maya is also those sponge trying to pull us back. The guilt, the shame, the self-criticism, that's also the sponge's way of keeping us in that state of separation and disconnection. So in the same way that we're practicing self-compassion, we're being satoguni now with others. Applying the same to ourselves is a part of it as well. So again, you can read through. These are brilliant suggestions, Sangatji. Beautiful. Gal is strong, but Sangat will keep pulling you along. Start small. I can hear some people saying, do 2 minutes, do small slots if you're struggling. Waheguru. So we've got perseverance, keep on listening to your voice, consistency, breath work helps. So the perseverance, the consistency, again, we've found this within our own practice that, sometimes when we are on this path and we're connecting to this wisdom, we have the inspiration, motivation to do a whole lot of Simran all at once. And then those sponge inevitably come back into our minds and pull us back, and then we don't do anything. And what, I've found personally is that having a consistent practice, just kind of doing a little bit every day, morning, a little bit in the afternoon, a little bit in the evening, keeps that mind connected to the Shabad, to the Gurmantra, to Atma. So yeah, let's see what else we've got. Don't try to be someone else, as Guruji will guide you towards your true self. It's like digging a water well. Trust that there's water beneath the surface. Just keep digging. Vaheguru. And, when we come together and we do the Simran in this call, and if any of you are able to go into the Sangat and do the Simran, what we experience is a glimpse of that Sahaj, And, sometimes when we come into the Sangat, we do Simran with somebody, it's the first time that we've experienced the Sahaj, but just that experience gives us that trust that there is, that like Paji is describing, there is, Sahaj inside of us, there is Naam inside of us, there is that connection inside of us. And it's just about how we access that and continue to access that. Waheguru. So somebody, sharing that they're feeling disconnected today, concentration is poor. you know, I felt the same, to be honest, at the beginning of this call, and I'll share why later on when I do my talk. That I had a bit of a conflict situation earlier, and so I came onto the call and I was like, you know, feeling a bit scattered. And just, but I knew as soon as I would come onto the call, you know, I knew that I would be able to connect. And as we do this more, as we walk on this path more, you know, it doesn't matter if we feel like we've, you know, struggled within Rajota more, or we feel like our concentration is poor. The Sachi Sangat is that Sarovar, is that Amrit Sarovar, Sat Sangat, Sat Gur Satavadi, Jit Nate, sorry, Amritsar Satgur Satavadi, Jit Nate Kaua Hansa Hove. That it doesn't matter how black we feel, you know, how much like a crow we feel, that we will get cleansed within the Sat Sangat. Vaheguru. So again, all Sangat are saying the same things, really helpful. Ardas, um, the group energy, yeah, going into Sangat, the vibration. Hermit mode, that's an interesting one when struggling. Sometimes you just need to take yourself away from the storm, and get yourself connected, you know, find that asra again, find that riverbank again, you know, when those waves are kind of so turbulent, and then come back into the situation from a different space. Waheguru. And somebody saying, using that determination and that sense of achievement we have towards other things in our lives, directing that. Waheguru, that's a very inspirational message. Connecting to the medicine for the mind. Waheguru. Brilliant. So I think, you know, we can just end the call right now and do the Simran because that's it. Like, you know, every one of us has the wisdom inside of us already, you know, and we'll come to know this today when we look at internal family, that we all have the voice of Vaheguru, that wisdom from Atma inside of us. And, you know, it's just how do we access that? And that's what we're doing on this course with Guruji's Kirpa. So Amandeep, over to you.
Right. Sorry, computer's playing up. Okay, so, all right, good. So I'm just going to go through a summary of what we talked about and maybe go a little bit deeper, and then Benji's going to continue to go deeper into that. So last week, Benji was talking about these different states of mind and body, if you like. So Maharaj ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਰਜਗੁਣ ਤਮਗੁਣ ਸਤਗੁਣ ਕਹੀਏ ਇਹ ਤੇਰੀ ਸਭ ਮਾਇਆ ਚੌਥੇ ਪਦ ko jo nar chine tin hi param pad paya. So there's these three states, Rajagun, Tamagun, and Satagun, and these are considered Maya. So some people, if you've discovered kind of Ayurvedic medicine, or if you've looked into the Hindu traditions, they talk about these three guns of Maya as well. But the context that we're using here is in terms of how we categorize where our mind goes. So what Maharaj is telling us in this Bhakti is, if we're just stuck within these three different states of mind, we're not going to realize Paramatma. And as we know, again and again, we've spoken about, our true purpose is to have that milab, to have that union with Paramatma, to experience Vaheguru while we're living. And then we can go on to merge with them as we pass on. And that state is that fourth state. So we want to transcend this Maya. Now, that might seem impossible because we've grown up in the society where we're very much encouraged to do, right? If you work hard enough, if you have a problem, just solve it through your thinking. And as we were saying just earlier, that Maharaj is telling us it's not just this thinking that's going to help you. So if we're in this constant state of just wanting the next thing, and then if we don't get it, then we become upset, we become angry, we become prideful, we fall into tamo, or we start to do those, some of us might be new on this path of Sikhi or spirituality, and we just start to do those good things. But what happens again is the old personality takes over, those bunch jawed take over, Maya takes over, and we get pulled again and again back into being the old person, the conditioned self. We've been programmed by society to have certain hopes, wishes, and desires, to have certain values. So there's two ways I'm talking about this. One is from a societal point of view, because a lot of us have been born and brought up here. But from the Gurbani perspective, Gurbani is telling us that they've labeled it as Gal or Maya or the Panchchod, are these kind of negative entities within us that are pulling us down away from Paramatma. So Maharaj tells us, is dehi andar Panchchod vasa hai, काम क्रोध लोभ मोह अहंकारा अमृत लूटे मन मुख नहीं बुझे कोई न सुने पुकारा. That these panch jod, so we have काम, which is those lustful desires, which could just be for new handbags as well. That can be a lustful desire, right? This काम, this krodh, this anger. What happens when our desire is not met? We become angry. काम, krodh. Then the lobh, if our desire is met, we just want more and more. We become greedy. Then we become attached to it. We start saying, "In mera, this person is mine. These things are mine." And then that becomes our sense of our identity, our sense of pride, our ahankar. And so at any point, if we get what we want and then we lose it, we come back to krodh, or we come back to rajagun, we come back to those anxieties. And this is the game that we're constantly playing. Now, Maharaj is telling us in this Bhakti, within us is also that Amrit, which Benji is going to go deeper into what is playing out within us, what is our internal family, what are the different elements. But Maharaj is telling us here that we have the Amrit, we have that connection, whether that's a physical sensation of Amrit on our tongue within our mouth, or whether that's that connection to Paramatma, that peace and that bliss and that love. That is by default within us, just like that newborn baby that hasn't started to think yet, isn't attached yet, doesn't have desires yet. That baby is peaceful, that is blissful, is full of love, as long as they're being looked after and they're well, right? And that is our default state. But these panchchod, these different types of mindsets or these different entities within us will pull us more into desire, will pull us into anger, greed, attachment, pride, and ego. And Maharaj is telling us, Anda Jagat Anda Vartara Baj Guru Gubara, that without a true guru, that we're always going to be lost. We see out there in the world, it does not matter how many things that you achieve. We're told from a young age, if you get your education, you get your job, you get married, you have children, you buy your house, you buy your second house on rent, you go on the holidays, right? Then you will be happy. But we know, hopefully by now, that line is always moving. And yes, it gives us a little bit of pleasure for a short time. But then those panchchod, Kal, Maya kicks in again. And we think that our happiness lies in the material world, but it just doesn't. There's something within us, that Atma, that Paramatma, that Jyot within us that is the source of our Sukh. So ultimately, Maharaji is telling us that we have two options in this world. Live tat doe rahe ukami kar kamaye. We can either walk on this path of love, of loving connection to Paramatma, to Vaheguru, or we can walk on this path of tat, of materialism. And again, we will see this theme within Gurbani of Aape beej, aape hi khao. Kar kar karna, likh le jao, aape beej, aape hi khao. By doing certain actions again and again and again, we are planting the seeds. Karmi apo apani, ke nere ke dur. Through our actions, through our karam, which means actions, we either become closer or become further away. And so I love Sikhi with a passion, but one of the things that I love about Sikhi in my personal journey is that Maharaj liberated me, gave me mukti, in the sense that Manaji showed me, okay, this is where you're making this decision, whether it's been programmed, whether it's been subconscious, whether it's become because of your circumstances, you have made this decision in your life, and there's going to be a consequence. We can also consider the word hukam to be law, right? Bij, khao. There's something that's happened and there's an outcome to that. Garmi apu apni, ke nere ke dur. And so if we were to boil this choice down, it's this choice. Are we choosing the path of love? Are we walking towards Vaheguru, to this higher power, to our true source? Are we walking towards love? Or are we walking on this path of Tat, this path of materialism, of Maya, of the physical world? And it doesn't mean that we can't go to work, we can't look after our family and do all of those things. But what is our priority here? You know, do we think that the end goal is to be worldly successful and that's where our happiness will come from? Or do we know that actually that joy, that peace, that happiness is already inside of us? And so at different times of the day, we will come into Raju, right? We'll wake up in the morning, we'll start thinking about, especially at the beginning of this journey, we'll start thinking about, Aaj main ki karna? What am I going to do today? What work do I have? Do I need to get my family ready? Do I need to go here? Do I need to go there? And where the difficulty comes in is sometimes we think in black and white and we think, oh, does that mean I just wake up and I just wander around and, you know, I don't go to work and I don't look after my family? That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is you don't have to worry about it. You can know what you need to do that day and you can do it, but you can do it without the desires, the anxieties, and the worries. And so what happens when things don't work out? We've decided we need to do X, Y, Z. And just as Benji was explaining, a kalesh comes up, a conflict comes up, somebody or something stands in your way, they don't agree with you, something goes wrong, then we fall into tamagun, right? Then we start to get angry, right? We start to think something, we deserve something, it's my right. Then we start slandering and gossiping and backbiting. We become jealous of people who have what we don't have. We fall into that hatred, and that line is never ending. So a couple of examples, you know, this week has been just like, I don't know what the word is. It's had like, I've had so many experiences this week, and for me it was just defining this whole journey into Sikhi, in towards my guru. So yesterday I drove my husband to Manchester for a competition. And there was, of course, there was a hope, there was a wish, there was a desire to win this competition. It was a sports competition. And my job was simply as driver and supporter to go along there. But when things didn't work out, something unexpected happened. Jo anhoni hue, Nove Padsha, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji tells us that why do we do chinta when the unexpected happens? Because the unexpected is always happening, right? How much control do we actually have? But it's when we have that expectation, we have that desire, not karta purkh, not that Vaheguru is doing it, but main karta, I'm the one who's doing it. And when we have that expectation that everything should work out that way, we're going to fall. And that's playing out in our mind, right? We have the expectation, something doesn't work out, someone says something, something physically happens, and then we fall. And what started to happen was, oh yeah, it was, my husband does wrestling, and it was like, oh, it was that wrestler's fault. And I was, you know, I was trying to make him feel better, and I was like, oh no, it's that guy, he shouldn't have done that. And my husband, very humble, you know, he's just an amazing person in that sense, and he was like, no, no, it's my fault, I should have done this, I should have done that. And then at some point the realization dropped that actually asi dukhi hona, we're just going to be dukhi by analyzing this situation. So we, you know, we stopped off at the services. This is like 10, 11 o'clock at night. We're both totally exhausted. And I'm like, let's just stop. Let's just stop picking this apart. You're exhausted. I'm exhausted. Jo hua, so hovat bachane. Whatever's happened has happened. You did your best. You were amazing. I'm in awe. Like, we're not young anymore. We're in our mid 40s. For you to put that effort in, that was amazing. He said this comment, I'm going off on one, but I'll come back. He said this comment, he was wrestling this Eastern European guy and he was much older. And he was like, oh, yeah. I was like, that will be you, as you get older, you'll just get stronger and stronger. He was like, no. He was like, it's in their genes. And I was like, what's in your genes? Right? You're the ancestor of Baba Deep Singh Ji. That's also within your genes. Baba Deep Singh Ji continued to fight even despite not having their Sid, right? So that is in our genes. But that kind of gyan doesn't come from thinking. It doesn't come from an analysis. Yes, we have the Sakya and they inspire us, but it comes from this internal sense. It's from beyond thought. It's that direct connection. Turki bani ai, din sagali chinta mitai. When you let go and let God, when you leave everything up to Paramatma, yes, you still do that effort. You do those karam, but you leave them to Paramatma. Why? Because Paramatma is the one who made everything in the first place. They give you life. Ape dekhe, ape karta, kar kar dekhe, din de saas raha hai. They're the one who's giving you this breath. Sabse no kirpal, samale sahe sahe. Sometimes we think the kirpa is not on me, but Maharaj tells us every day, Rera Sahib, sabse no kirpa. Everybody's got that kirpa on them. And how do we know that? Because we've got this very breath. This breath comes in, this breath goes out. That's all we need. And I always say, sometimes we do talks at schools to the children, if gravity was a little bit stronger, we wouldn't be able to walk. And if it was a little bit less, we'd be floating around. But Paramatma created that gravity, right? If the sun was a little bit stronger, hotter, we would burn to death. If it was a little bit colder, we would freeze to death. So that very wisdom that is within Jo Brahmande, whatever's in that, in the dunya, in creation, in the universe, that intelligence, Jo Brahmande, Soi Pinde, is also within us, within this body. Jo Koje, So Pave. And the one that does Koj of that, the one that searches for that intelligence, that love, that Jot, that light, they will find it. So these are different ways that we're going to walk on that path. So yes, we might start with that hope, wish, and desire, but just be aware that when you're having that, why am I having it? What is it that I'm looking for? Do I think I'm going to be happy when I get it? And you don't need to go into an analysis about it, but the question is just there to remind you that actually this is my mat now. I want to leave it to Paramatma. And when we don't get it, we fall. But then there's this other aspect. We walk on this path of love. Sant ka marg dharam ki pauri, ko vadapagi pae. We can walk on this path of a saint from Rajagun to Satagun. So last week there was this question about sometimes that very desire can be that desire for Paramatma. And Hanji, at the beginning, that's fine. It might come from Rajagun. And then that will inspire us through Maharaji's Kirpa to walk on this path of love. So we'll start walking from Rajo to Sato. We'll start coming to the Gurdwara. We'll start reading Gurbani. We'll start doing works of charity, being compassionate with others and ourselves. And that's really good. We want to be walking on that path. But the reason why that's still not enough, Sangatji, is good to do it. The reason why it's still not enough is then if something, again, unhoni, if something unexpected happens, what do we say? Just search within your mind for a moment. A family member passes away, someone becomes ill, we lose some money, a relationship becomes conflictual. And what do we say? Why me? Maharaj, I've done so much seva. Maharaj, I've done so much bad. I've never said anything bad to anybody. It becomes this exchange, right? We're walking this path. We're being Satoguni because we want to still fulfill our worldly desires. And so we fall again. And we end up in this cycle of Maya, of Dukh and Sukh. Sometimes we feel good. We get what we want, our expectation, our desire. And if it doesn't go our way, we fall. And we're constantly falling within this cycle of Maya. And it's happening through our vichar, right? The physical world is part of that, but it's not what's happening to us. It's what we're thinking about what's happening to us that is causing our dukh. As we know from our ittihas, from those Matava and Mir Manus jails who are having their children cut piece to piece and put as hard around their necks. And every day they were still waking up, doing that ardas, that, you know, this villa, this time has been so graceful. Maharaji, just keep blessing us with your grace. They didn't take on this mindset of why is this happening to me? Or why have you taken my child away? Doleni, they didn't fall. Not just because they were strong-willed. And that's what we think when we think about ittihas of our history and these Shaheed Singh and Singhania and these people who overcame these difficulties. We think they were just strong-minded. They were strong-willed. But actually, what we forget, the inspiration within those sakhiya, babaniya, kahaniya, put saput karen, through these stories of our ancestors, it makes a normal child into a super child. What we forget, that missing ingredient, is that naam they were connected to. They were having this experience of Vaheguru. They were in this fourth state, this Chotha Pad, where they knew they were not just this body. They knew they weren't just this circumstance. They knew that child was not theirs, it was Vaheguru's. And they were connecting to that jyot within themselves. They were still Sukhi, no matter what was happening to them, because they were experiencing that Prakash. They were hearing that Shabad. They were beyond Dukh and Sukh. And Sangatji, that might seem so far away from us, but it's not. And, you know, someone was saying on the chat, through that company of Gurumukhs, we realize this is possible. And as we start to walk on this path, we start to do these practices, we start to overcome those dukh. And it might be that little dukh of losing a competition. I also went to Buckingham Palace this week with my sister, which a few years ago, you know, 7-8 years ago, I would have been excited, and then I would have been anxious about what I'm going to wear and will I fit in. You know, even 2 years ago, I just wouldn't have gone. I would have said it's going to give me too many vichar. It's, you know, anti-Sikhi and who's the queen and or the king, and they've taken all this money. But this week there was no vichar. It was like my sister wanted me to come. I was like, Satbachan. I was like, if whatever Guru wants, I was like, if Guru wants me to come, I will come. If not, I will be busy that day. Something will happen. I did one benti. I was like, if I can wear my kirpan, I'll come. And a mabana, I'll come. That was for my personal comfort, right? And it was fine. It was amazing. We went, we enjoyed it. There was no Rajoguni vichar about, oh, these rich people, I wish I was rich like them. There was no Tamoguni vichar. I wasn't slandering and gossiping, oh, the king's like this, or, you know, William, or because they're, you know, they're subject to this as well. They have all of this money. How much kalesh is in their family, right? Because without the true guru, without this true wisdom, we are all subject to this. And yes, they do lots of works of charity as well. So we just turned up. But we did it without those vichar. And when you're doing it without those vichar, when you're killing your thoughts, vichar mare, tare tare. As you kill these thoughts and you become more and more connected to your true essence, that Jyot Sarup that you are, what you'll find is you will become liberated from life. You'll become liberated from conditions, from expectations, from desires. And then you can truly enjoy life. You can be fully present with whatever experience is in front of you. You can see Vaheguru. Har ka roop hai, har roop nadari aya. You can see Vaheguru ji's roop within everything that you experience. So yes, we can be in Satogun, but the reason why Satogun is not enough is because we're still having vichar, we're still having an expectation, and we will still fall. So Maharaj is telling us that we want to fight with our mind. So Maharaji tells us in this Shabad, live tat doera hai, hukmi kar kamai. So we have this choice. We can walk on the path of love, loving connection towards Paramatma, or materialism. Gurmukh apna man marya sabad kasavati lai. So how do we do this? How do we walk on this path of love? We have to kill those thoughts. We have to kill that man mat mind. with the Shabad. So we chant, why? Guru, the thoughts come, why? Guru, we bring the attention back. You know, we're chanting, and then we think about what happened 10 years ago. We kill that thought with the Shabad. Then we're thinking about what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen in 5 years, what's going to happen with my children, what's going to happen with my parents. We kill that vichar. Because as long as those thoughts are there, those vichar are there, we're going to struggle, we're going to suffer. When we kill it, we come back to peace. Peace is in this moment. Peace is in this breath. Tuk dam karari jo karaho, hajir, hajur, khodai. When you focus only on this breath, there's no other vichar, there's no past, there's no future, there's no judgment, there's no fear. We're nirbhau, nirvair. Tuk dam karari jo karo. The one who really focuses on this breath, on this moment. Hajir, hajur, khodai. You will feel that presence of the ever-present Paramatma within you. So we use that Shabad to kill those thoughts of the mind. Man hi naal chagara, man hi naal sat, man hi manj samay. So Maharaj is telling us this is who you're meant to be fighting with. Not your husband, wife, not your children, not your work colleagues, not your parents, not your friendship group, not your cousins or your pua, or your masi or your mummy, right? Who are we meant to be fighting with? Man hi naal chagara. Fight with those thoughts of the mind, those panchjor, kal, that maya that's in your mind. Fight with that. And then make up with that. Make up with your man as well. And then find that peace within there. Your mind will become your best friend. Why? Because what is the true nature of your mind? Man, tu jot sarup hai, apna mool pachan. Recognize the true nature of your mind is actually jot sarup. It's that light of Vaheguru. You are a drop in the ocean of Vaheguru. And if the ocean contains love, if the ocean contains patience, forgiveness, compassion, truth, then you also contain that. The only thing that's got in the way of you experiencing that are the constant thoughts, desires, expectations, wishes. And so ultimately, as we know, the only desire that we want, and it's a body, right? It's a staircase. We take one step forward. Sometimes we fall 2 steps back. We take 5 steps forward, then we take a few steps back, but we are always making that progress as long as we are steadfast on this path of love. So Maharaj continues, Mana jo ichhe so lahe, sache sabad savai. And then you'll get those desires anyway. I always say, and this is Guru's vidya, not my vidya, that everything I've ever asked for, Sangat Ji, I've always got it. Only to find out that it wasn't what was going to bring me happiness, whether it was a job, whether it's my amazing husband, even my mother-in-law is amazing. Everything I've asked for, I've got. But the problem was never on the outside. The problem was the vichar on the inside, that unworthiness, right? That discontentment, that anger, that galesh was happening inside of me. So Maharaji has given me everything just to show me, but this is not what you're looking for. This is not going to bring you peace. And now that ardas is a singular ardas. That ardas is deho sajan asi sariyan, jo hove sahib syo mel. Because now that Maharaji has done their kirpa and we're able to walk on this path, and yes, we fall every day, but now when we fall, we know that the only solution is that naam. The only reason I've got into an argument with somebody is because of what's going on in my mind. The only reason why I'm struggling or I've become ill is because of what's happening in my mind. And when we start to work with that, the world changes. Again, the doubters will come in and say, whoa, but you don't know my mother-in-law. You don't know my husband or my wife. You don't know my children. They really are abusing me. They really are. And Hanji, that will be true as well. But how will you overcome that? Is you have to work on your own mind. Maharaji has empowered us to work on our own mind. If you are in that situation where someone is abusing you, one, it can be your perception because that's what the Panchjot are telling you. But 2, if you are in that dangerous situation, you still have to work on your mind to get out of that situation. And it's not about the manmat, the dunyavi of blame and shame. Maharaj kente dadde dosh na deo kise. Don't blame anyone else. Look at your own karam, look at your own thinking, look at your own words, look at your own actions. And it might be that you move away from someone or you move closer to them. But your job in entirety is to work on your own mind. Then when your mind is pavitr, when you're connected to Paramatma, just like Dasve Padsha, they didn't pick up the sword because they wanted revenge. They didn't pick up the sword because they were stuck in these vichar. They picked up the sword because Maharaj instructed them to, because their mind was so nirmal, right? And we can't say we're at that stage. We can't say, oh, I'm going to go attack somebody because Vaheguru told me to, because we're just not at that stage. If you're in that stage where you're having prakash, you're hearing Shabad, your mana is in union, in malap with Vaheguru, then that instruction is coming through, and it will still come through. So I'm going to kind of finish off there, but just that reminder, Maharaji tells us at the end, Vin manne je hori na lujana, jasi janam gavai. If we are fighting, if we are struggling with anything, this is Guru Sahib's bachan. Guru Sahib is telling us, forget fighting with other people, look at your own. It doesn't mean you start blaming yourself, you start shaming yourself, you start hating yourself, because those are not Gurmat qualities. Those vichar are coming from the Panchjot, from Kal, from Maya. So we even want to fight those vichar. And as we do that Simran, we are learning how to do that. And then you get to this place where there's no vichar, when you're doing your Simran. And that's where you start to really experience that peace, that bliss, that love, that connection to Vaheguruji. And as you start to experience it, you can't unknow it. Once you've experienced that level of connection to Vaheguru, you can't unknow it. And then even if you're chasing after things, and it will take time, it will take practice. You know, we will still fall off. The Panch are very powerful. You know, we'll get obsessed with the house, the holiday, the job change, changing someone, changing ourselves in different ways. But we'll always come back to that experience that we've had, that truth that we've had, that is inside of us. And that's why Maharaji has given us then that system. When we come into the Sadh Sangat, and we talk about it, we share our experiences. Some people say you shouldn't share your experience, right? Well, Gurbani is full of Brahm Gyanis, Guru Sahibs, the Pats, the Bhagats, who are sharing their experience. Why did they share it? We don't share it out of ego, we share it out of inspiration. Because what's happened, this is my vichar, but what's happened to our Qawm is we've got so afraid of sharing that we've even forgotten that this exists, that it's even possible to have that milap. And it is possible. It's possible to hear that Anhad the Shabad. It's possible to see Prakash. It's possible to transform who you are completely, to the extent that even if you are the only person doing the Simran, the whole family around you starts to change. That is possible. It's not just a sakhi. It's not just a story. It's possible. And when we come into the Sangat, Gur Sakhi Jot Paragat Hoye. That Jot becomes more and more Paragat. The more we do that Simran, the more Khoj of Gurbani we do, the more we talk about it in Sangat and share and inspire each other, motivate each other, the more we will continue to walk on that path. And then we start to transcend. Now, it's not that we never have a vichar, but that vichar will then come from Paramatma themselves. All of a sudden, you'll have an idea for a business and you'll be like, where did that come from? It didn't come from your analytical, your thinking mind, your subconscious mind. It came from such, you know, you have a problem and all of a sudden you will know what to do about that problem because your mind has become so clear. You are now directly connected to Paramatma themselves and they will resolve all of your affairs. Thirkar baiso harijan pyare Satguru tumare kaj savare. So when you go to that Thirkar, to your true home, Jotapad, you go beyond your vichar through the Simran and you become Hari Dajan, you dedicate this mind to Vaheguru. Then Satguru tumare kaj savare. Satguru themselves resolves all of our affairs. And most of the time we don't believe it. We know it, we've read it, but we don't truly believe it. We don't have that vishwas that Maharaji is actually sir rijak sambahe Thakur, that Sanu sambal there, that they're looking after us, that they have a perfect destiny for us already. But it's only we've gone off on this path of Dad is why we're not experiencing that. And as we learn to surrender, to let go, to give up our own thoughts, to come back to the Simran, then you start to experience. Call it in modern language, we call it synchronicities, right? We call it miracles. Those things start to show up in your lives. And this is not just one person saying it. You know, in Sangat, we've seen people transform. We've seen people struggling, falling apart, depressed, anxious, physically ill. And then we've seen them completely transform, just as Benji was saying at the beginning, where we transform from that crow, which represents that dirt, that male of the Vichar, to that Hans, that represents that purity, that Nirmal of having that clear mind. So Benji, forgive me, I kind of went off on one there. And I'm going to invite you to continue.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So, Sangat Ji, Gurbani tells us that in this turbulent ocean of Dragon, when those waves come, the Gurmukh finds a place of safety, a kinara, the riverbank, the shore. Because from that place of safety, those waves of Rajogun, Tamogun, Satogun Kehiya, E Teri Sab Maya, those waves do not affect the mind. So Gurbani tells us, Jaise jal mein kamal niralam, murgai na sani, Surt Shabad Pav Sagar Tariya, Nanak Naam Vakhani. That in the same way that that lotus flower sits on top of that water, remains unaffected by the waves of that water, in the same way that bird, that murgabi, sits on top of the water and its feathers remain dry. Guru Nanak Dev Ji tells us that if we learn how to connect our surti to that Shabad, we can cross over that Bhav Sagar. We do not get affected by that Bhav Sagar, those waves, those lehera of Rajogun, Tamogun, and Satogun, which create turbulence, suffering inside of us. So Sangatji, that Kinara, how do we access that bank? How do we sit on that shore? How do we take that mind above? And Gurbani tells us the way to do that is to connect the surti to the Shabad, to rise above Bhavan, Pawn, which the mind is immersed in, and connect to Naam instead. So Sangatji, we're going to practice this now. All of us, every single one of us sitting here, may be having some different kinds of vichar. Some of us, our minds might be in Rajogun. Some of our minds might be in Tamogun. Some of the minds may be in Satogun. And we are going to take the mind above all of that and build that relationship, that connection, that pathway to that fourth state, that kinara, such that whatever comes up within life, does not affect the mind. The mind can still stay in that state of loving connection to Paramatma, that state of Sahaj, that state where it is awake and aware. And in the same way that that spider creates a web for itself, and from that web, it drops down on one string that it creates from its mouth, it drops down. It does what it needs to do on the tarti, but it keeps one part of itself aware of that thread because it knows that if it doesn't, it will not know how to get back home. And Sangati, in that same way, when we come to play within this material realm, within these dragon, we come into the dragon to do our work, to look after our families. But we keep ourselves aware of that thread, of that connection. We are doing the Simran. We are keeping our drishti in this Brahm. We are listening to the Shabad. We are staying awake and aware so that we can go home at any time. So Sangatji, let us spend some time now finding that Ginara, finding that shore, finding that bank, so that we can come back to that place of safety with every breath. So Sangatji, we're going to do the Simran. We're going to chant the Guru Mantra, Vai Guru, and we're going to keep bringing our surti back to the Shabad, to the Guru Mantra. And then we're going to spend some time at the end in Dhyan. So what that means is we're going to start by chanting out loud. Naturally, as the Pavan becomes balanced, as the surti connects to the Shabad, as those brain waves slow down, the chanting will go quieter and quieter. And then we are going to chant internally. And after that, if the mind is stable, we are going to sit in Dhyan, which means that we are going to sit, take our mind to that Kinara. And Gurbani tells us that the point that we sit at, where we put the Dhyan, is that Nabi. Nab, Pavan, Kare Asan Baise, Gurmukh Khojat Tatlah. That we place that Dhyan at that Nabi. And we sit at that door, and we wait until we can hear that Shabad, that asra for the mind. So Sangatji, let us prepare ourselves, sitting comfortably, eyes closed, and learn how to come out of this Bhavsagar, this world ocean of turbulence, of pain, of suffering. So let us begin. Vai Guru, 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 Vaheguru, 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 Guru, Vai, 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 Grow, 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 vai, grow. Vai, guru, 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 vai. Vai, guru, 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 Vaheguru, 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 Guru, Vai, 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 Guru, Antargat. And now, decaying that mind at that nabi, no longer chanting with the tongue or internally, just placing our attention, our asana at that nabi. निज कर महल पावो सुख सहज बाहर ना होए को फेरा. When that mind comes out of dragon, goes into its home, there it finds peace. And from continuing to go home and learning and committing to that practice, Gurbani gives the guarantee that at that last breath, when it's time for us to end our time in this Manuki Jana, if the mind knows how to go home, if the mind has practice, Gurmukh Ave Jaye Nisang, if the mind knows how to move into this dish and back home with ease, and then at that last breath, the mind will know where to go and will come out of birth and death. Nij kar mahal pavo sukh sahje, bahar na hoye go fera. So Sangat Ji, as we come to the end of today's session, please do share in the comments your experience. How do you feel within your body? How does the mind feel after having done that Simran? And a humble request that over the next week, that we put in that little bit more practice. We want to do the Simran for long enough that the mind goes into Sahaj, that the mind goes into its home. And it's only then, Sangat Ji, that the mind will come to believe that what Gurbani is saying, the vichar that's being shared, is true. Because Sangat Ji, the mind has accumulated man from janams and janams. Janam janam ko isko mal lagi kala hua seo. It's become blackened by that man. And in that state of being blackened, it cannot access the wisdom. It cannot see the truth. And Sangat Ji, it's only when we, especially in the initial stages on this journey, work hard to clear that man through doing that Simran over and over, clearing that man, finding that home inside. It is only then, Sangat Ji, that we will be able to experience a change in our minds and in our lives. That it doesn't matter how much gyan we accumulate, how much, even in these sessions that we accumulate. Ultimately, without the practice, we will not be able to experience that elevated state of consciousness. Gurbani tells us, Kaho Nanak, eho tat bichara, bin har bhajan nahi shutkara. That the essence of the entire Gurbani, of all spiritual paths, the tat, that truth is that without the chanting, without the bhajan bandagi, without the simran, we will not experience that shutkara. So, Sangat Ji, as we come to the end of the session today, just going to look through the comments to see if anybody has shared their experiences of today. Waheguru. And if you don't feel to share, then let's just join with some more Simran. Just do our Antargat Simran now and learn how to play this game of life where even with our eyes open, even when we are doing our worldly duties, how do we come onto that Ginara? How do we come onto that bank, the river bank? And Sangatji, at this stage, it is the Simran that we use as the asara. So as we are reading the comments, as we starting to open our eyes and getting ready to go into our worldly lives, let us practice whilst we're on the call together for these last few moments, 3 minutes we have together. Can we keep that Simran going? Whether that's Antargat, Va, Guru, Va, Guru, whether that's out loud, let us keep our mind at that place of sehaj, so that whatever turbulence comes up, inside of us, outside of us, we can stay in that state of connection. We can save those swas, those breaths. And Gurbani tells us that in that state of samdrishti, having those two alongside, a part of us in connection, a part of us doing that worldly duty, keeping those two in parallel. Karam taram doe chopar sajo sat karo tum sari. That the true way of life, the path of the Gurmukh, is that path of samdrishti, that we keep our connection going. We keep that love, that path of that live connected to Paramatma. And in that way, all of those breaths are counted. So Sangatji, please do read the comments. And for those of us who are struggling, which we all will be at different times with the practice, we just keep on going. We keep coming back to these sessions, keep showing up, finding opportunities within the week. On the Monday, we have the Simran Vichar that is shared, recorded and shared on the group. On the Wednesdays, we have 5 to 6 Simran. Thursdays, we have the Q&A. And at any time, there are many opportunities. We can put a YouTube clip on for an hour and listen and do the Simran alongside. There are Telegram channels that we can join where there's 24/7 Simran playing. So that whenever you have some free time from your work, from your duties, that we try and really put this effort in this week. That is going to be this week's homework, twofold. One is to try and spend that little bit more time in the sitting down Simran. The other is to practice doing Antargat or outline Simran whilst we are doing our worldly duties. And then we are to share on the Thursday, we will report back. And again on the Sunday as well for week 5 of the Simran course. So, Sangatji, we've come to the end of the session. Please forgive any mistakes made during the session. The recording of this session will be up in a few days. And Amandeep Benji, if there's anything you would like to share at the end of this session. And if
no, it's just a lot of positive experiences happening, a lot of emotions coming up. So Maharaj Kirpa, those are all positive. Like Benji said, as we keep doing the work, there were just two really quick questions. One was about, can we kill the thoughts or do we simply redirect them? So ultimately, we will be killing them, and the more Simran that we do, the more we will experience that there's less and less thoughts there. So for example, we've just done the Simran now. Maybe the mind was really busy before that, but it just gets to the point where you're just completely there, present. There's not this internal voice going on. So sometimes people will redirect them to positive ones at the beginning, but again, that's within Sattva-guni, that's within Maya. Ultimately, we will start to transcend them through the asara of the Shabad, through the support of the Shabad. And we might have mentioned before, this chanting, doing the Simran out loud, listening to the sound of our voice, that's just the first stage. As we start to hear the internal Shabad, we will start to sit and do dhyan on that. And at that point, if we're having thoughts at that point, our mind is not going to be singly focused. So that is the idea. The other question was, how do we stop the instant reaction to an unexpected situation? And the answer is always Simran, because what we're practicing is we're focusing at this stage on the sound of our voice. The thought comes up, we bring it back. The thought comes up, we bring it back. And so we're teaching our mind how to come back to Sach again and again, how to come back to peace again and again. And so as we practice that with our eyes closed, what you'll start to find, the more Simran that you do, is that when you're faced with a situation outside that is unexpected or not pleasurable, you'll be able to bring your mind and relax into that state of peace again and again. And sometimes it's doing the Simran, sometimes it's listening to the Shabad, sometimes it will just be a deep breath. But that training ground is all in that eyes closed Simran. And the more that we do that, and the better we get at bringing the mind back to that state of peace, the more that will show up in your life. You'll become less reactive to this situation. So sometimes we're looking for other tools, and there's plenty out there in the world. As Benji and I, we work with people, we've spent time looking for lots and lots of tools to find that sukh. But ultimately, what we found now, and which is why we're here, is that, everything that we need is within that Simran. So we talk about breath work, the breath work's in the Simran. We talk about regulating the nervous system, that's within the Simran. Being less reactive, that's within the Simran. And, we've got a couple more weeks left, and we will continue after this as well. And we can go deeper into what are the other aspects of that Simran that help us. But for now, that's Maharajji's hukam. Eko naam hukam hai, Nanak Satgur diya bujai jio. So the more we can practice, the more we will experience it for ourselves, and those doubts and fears will be removed. So iniya bentiyan parvan kaniya. We also have, on a Sunday, we have a divan at Singh Sabha Gurdwara, which is also streamed live on YouTube. So please look out for the link in the evening. And we also have the Telegram group, which throughout the day, so people sometimes come on and do Simran on that. So that can also become part of our Sahara. If you want to share on the WhatsApp group how your experiences have been, or any challenges that are coming up, again, feel free to do that, and then we will respond as we can, or we will respond on Thursday. So iniya bentiyan parvan kaniya, Guru Maharaj di fateh baloni. Vaheguru ji ka khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki fateh. Oh.